Welcome to DAPR 300R audio lecture series. Today, our guest, people in here know very well. I know very well. Sophie White is an alumni of UVU, also was our former studio manager, and we got to go on an adventure to Louisiana. And so I've spent a bunch of time with Sophie. Sophie, probably sick of me. Too much time, yep. But Sophie volunteered to come in and share with us some of the experiences that she's had through her time as a student and post-graduation. But what are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm here.
Good answer.
Helping out the professors, because you guys were a little overwhelmed this semester, it seemed like. So, yeah, here teaching some classes, filling in for Brian at the beginning of the semester at his advanced recording. For some of you from.
So I said you guys probably all met Sophie before.
Yeah. Or see me sitting in the corner, the back, trying to grade.
What classes are you filling in on this semester?
An essentials lab. 2 essentials lab technically, but Arlen's got it covered. Post-production, grading for sound design. Yeah.
So when you were a student, you got an award. Will you tell us about that and tell us about that process?
I did not get an award. I was nominated.
Nominated for the award.
But it was really cool. Getting nominated was basically the reward. It was the Cinema Audio Society Student Recognition Award. So Cinema Audio Society is a group of post-production mixers in Hollywood. So, the Oscar winners, that's them. They're really cool, and they have a lot of different programs for students. And so I applied, and I was one of 5 kind of around the world that got it. So we all got to go to the CS award ceremony in LA, downtown, big fancy thing. Guillermo del Toro was there, and it was awesome. And then they gave us, I didn't win. It was a student named Timo from Texas, who's a production mixer, and he's really cool. Everyone there, all the other students were really, really smart, really great. And they would be talking about like, oh yeah, this studio that we have, or this mixing station, or like, oh, we've done Atmos. And there was another girl from, say, Colombia, and she and I were like, we don't have any of that stuff. Like, feeling pretty like, why are we here? But we were talking to Carol, who was running it. Carol Urban, who's a mixer. She's won some awards. She just mixed Loki, the show, and she's done a lot of other stuff, cool stuff. She's awesome. She's like, we're not really going based on what equipment you have. It's more your dedication and your drive for it. We want everyone to have this opportunity. So it's not based on, your school's accreditation, basically. But I learned a lot. They took us there, and everyone was so excited to talk to students. And it's such a unspoken industry, especially even within film. Is like everyone says that they respect sound, but you still go under the radar. And so anytime someone finds interest in it, all of the professionals just get so excited and are trying to like info dump, like, okay, you got to do this, or like, oh, do this, and giving really good advice.
Wasn't it from this that you made a contact that we had a special guest lecturer in the?
No, so that's he was there. Julian Slater was there, and I did get to talk with him more. But it was while I was taking sound design. Nope, that was the first time. So Owen will sometimes take students to a sound design conference called Mix Presents Sound for Film and TV. And it's a sound conference for mixers and designers and industry professionals, production mixers to go and like have panels and chat. And in 2022, end of 2022, it's in fall, the end of September, we went, and one of the keynote speakers was Julian Slater, who was a last minute addition, but I was looking at the panel and I saw it, and I know his name because he mixed Baby Driver and all of Edgar Wright's films. And I had remembered watching Baby Driver in theaters. I watched it like 3 times. And I remembered like the sound was incredible and it blew me away and it like reinforced what I wanted to do. And so I remembered his name because I was like, like a goal kind of thing. And then he was there. After the panel, I saw Simon, who was our Austrian exchange student, talking to him, and I was like, opportunity. And I snapped in and chatted with him, and he was willing to come and chat with us. So I set it up.
I knew that I couldn't remember exactly how it worked, but there's something that you guys, online people, that you can learn out of this that's important. Sophie took opportunities that were beyond the scope of the walls of the school. And sometimes we have opportunities go to AES, sometimes we have opportunities go to NAM, the CAS, and then the Mix Presents and these other things. What did those do during your educational time to help you out?
Oh, so much, so much. So my first year, basically like really in the program, not just taking like generals or the essentials classes. I took sound design with Owen and he talked about Mix Presents and I knew nothing. Like I barely even knew what, like I had worked in Vegas, but I hadn't worked in Pro Tools at all. And then I asked him, I was like, is it worth it? Like I want to go to the sound design conference, but I don't know if like a more advanced student want to go. And he's like, no. Like anyone should go, anyone should go. And that gave all of us who went a really good example of what it is like in the post-production world, because we went and we visited studios, we visited like Warner Brothers and Sony and saw their mixing stages and talked about got little mixing workshops with mixers who were working there on shows or movies right then, and they showed us their setup and like how they worked in sound design, and it just kind of opened all of our eyes like, oh, this is the work that needs to go in, this is what is expected, and also this is kind of how you do it, because it's so much of it is this mystery, like it's magic smoke. It's crystals and random things that you have a general idea of, but you're like, I don't really know what these people are doing. This seems like voodoo.
That's all audio. You guys know that, right? All of our audio, when we talk about our frequency and locking in our clocks, it's all based off of magic crystals.
Waves, it's all waves. The whole universe is just waves.
Magic crystals that generate inside of the frequency of these crystals that we can then somehow make sync together and create a lock for our sync. We talk about it, we laugh about it, but and then what's the magic smoke?
Magic smoke is if you plug something in wrong.
Yeah. So all audio equipment runs on magic smoke, because if you let the magic smoke out, it stops
Doesn't work
working.
anymore.
That's right.
And
So
then
now
you
you
set a
guys
blue
get it.
spark and it's not good. You're like, oh no.
So that's what she was talking about. It's a reference I've made a lot of times. I make it in certain classes because we started talking about those things and you start thinking about it more and more, and audio is just
Yeah.
magic.
It is a little bit magic. It's kind of crazy that we figured this out. And like recording on analog tape, it's magnetic little dust that you're putting a waveform onto. It's crazy. What we do is really cool and really weird. Griffin and I, so Griffin, another professor here, one of my best friends, will often talk about it. We're like, dude, our job is weird. Our job gets wacky. You never know what you're gonna do one day to the next. Like some days you're like elbows deep in a watermelon trying to get a gore sound, and the other you're climbing in a ceiling running cable.
Done that fair share.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what keeps you busy day to day outside of the school?
So the moment I accepted all of the classes, I got an influx more than I have of outside gigs. So I'm mainly a production and post-production mixer. I do film work. That's my bread and butter, basically. So I work on short films on set. I got to work on a feature in September that was a really great time. I got to just be a boom op, which is really nice, not having to do both boom and mix. Anytime you're doing that, you can get a boom op or you can get a mixer, so you're just doing one job, so you can focus on that. That's key. that is great. And it's so much less stressful. You have like your little buddy on set, you have a team, much better instead of going solo. In addition to that, I freelance at a ADR recording studio up in Salt Lake. Voices now. They do a lot of language dubbing work. That's the majority of what they do. So we're recording remotely with, you know, voice talents in all over the world, literally all over the world.
How you sync them?
How do we sync them? We use our ears and our eyes. So we record through usually OBS and have it patched into our Pro Tools system so that we can talk. We'll have a language coach there over Zoom, and then we'll be recording. And sometimes they have a studio that they can go to, and we'll record through them so they have high quality stuff. Other times they just have a microphone in front of their computer, and we're always like crossing our fingers that it's not just a Yeti that's with Bluetooth. But we use, you know, typical ADR workflow of our beeps or however they like to record, and we'll have the English track that they'll record to. And because we're syncing, usually we have our loops, so we'll record and then we're always editing as we go. So because of delay over, you know, internet, it won't be directly in sync. And so we have the delay time, but usually we just take it, cut it, move it to where our loop is and see if it fits within our time frame and then move on. It's pretty easy. It's the easiest ADR I've ever done.
Because
you don't really have to sing too much.
because you can't get Tagalog and English to match.
No, Tagalog's not too bad. I can tell you. Tahitian is rough. The Islander languages, their words are longer, their phrases are much longer, and than English sometimes, and Islander time is real, and Islander time of speaking is real as well. Do you guys know what Islander time is?
Slow for half a year.
You know exactly what Islander time is.
Yeah.
It's slow, so they're going at their own time. They're not rushed for time. They're not gonna show up on time, and that's okay. I'm totally fine with it. The thing that gets frustrating is when I'm like, you need to speak faster because we only have this amount of time, and they're like, cool, and then they do the exact same. Like, all right, cool. And then I have to go in and quantize and like time shift and adjust it just right so it doesn't sound like it's artifacty and gross, but yeah.
It's always fun when somebody speaks cadence that
Yeah.
you don't like.
And then you go in and you cut the silence and you speed them up.
Worked in radio for a lot of years and would write down the time code on ums
Mm,
and we'd cut ums out of the broadcast. I got to a point where I didn't have to do that anymore because I knew what the waveform looked like. So I'd just be like, cut, 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 cut.
Yep.
Then I stopped writing it down and the host was like, you don't write that down anymore. I'm like, yeah, I can just see it. It looks like the same little blop that I'm used to. It doesn't matter who says it. But one guy said it in a 10-minute period, 1,527 times. That was a lot of edits. If you don't know what to say at any point, this goes to you guys when you're speaking. Naturally want to do. And pause. For audio editors, just makes your life easier.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time. Like, okay, if you get stuck, we'll just stop. You can pick up, but don't say
It's a filler word. And other languages have different, Japanese is that's what they'll do.
What's some other ones you know? You dealt with anybody from Singapore?
No, I've done some Indonesian languages though. Some of those small ones, and I'm like, I wish Brian were here that he could understand this or just talk to this person because this is frustrating.
They say la and ma and me.
Yeah,
So they'd be like, hey, what, ma? How you doing, ma? And then, like, ma? Like what? Like what is that? It's just a
yeah.
something they throw in the language?
Italians will go bull, like as a kind of what, or like a huh. Bull, bull. Yeah, kind of pick that one up sometimes. Someone will ask me, bull.
So you're balancing your time with a lot of freelance gigs. One that's kind of this is a more solid. But what are some of the other things that you've done out, like, and what's some stuff that we can track down?
So I'm not so aware of it. My brain buffers.
Loading.
The thing with production, because I've been doing a lot of production, there's a bit more of those jobs here in Utah right now. Where the industry's in a little tailspin. I'm going to be honest with you right now. The strike threw things out of whack, and we hadn't recovered from COVID. So in the friends or producers that I know in LA, they're like, there's no real work. And so there's commercials being filmed here. There's some features being filmed here. Kevin Costner's stuff down in St. George. I know some people on those. But the thing with doing production is there's a time delay between when you film it and when it actually comes out. And with indie stuff, you never really know when it's going to come out. With blockbuster stuff, you're like, okay, within a year or two, this is going to be out and going. But for some of the indie stuff, there's one. So I took a break after I graduated. I was extremely burnt out, and that's okay, guys. You can take breaks. Please take breaks for yourselves. It's so much harder to do work whenever you're, and be excited about the work whenever you're just exhausted. And I had a lot going on my last semester. It was tough, but I purposely took a break. I was like, I'm not going to worry too much about trying to get a job. And I had a few like short films that I had agreed to do that I just needed to clean up and finish. And then in, I want to say end of July, beginning of August, I had a friend call me up. She said, "You're still in Utah, right?" Yes. She goes, "We need a boom op down in Boulder for about a month, for like 3 weeks. How soon can you get here?" It's like, I'm in the middle. I have to finish up this project and then I can be down there. And so I was like, but until I can get there, Andrew Humphreys, who graduated with me, like, he's great. And I knew he was having trouble finding a job. So I sent him down there and then took over for him. But the project I was working on kept getting pushed back. And I'm so mad in retrospect that I didn't just tell them, hey, I have another gig I have to take. Because that gig it's my favorite project I've ever worked on. The location was amazing. Crew was incredible. And I really liked the story. And it felt like the first really professional thing that I had done. And it was the first production that I had done while not being in school, which I had kind of written off production sound. I was like, it's hard on my body. It's stressful. Don't sleep. It's all these things, but not having to worry about homework and just being able to like be there and just absorb everything and just focus on that and not be stressed about classes or all of these other jobs that I had to do. It was so wonderful. And being in the desert, guys, it's amazing. It was great. And so that one was called The Wilderness. It was directed by Spencer King, who's a little filmmaker out of LA. He's great. He's really fun. And the thing that I liked about that set was there wasn't a whole lot of ego. And that's the one that I'm waiting to come out. That's the one that I just keep, checking up on. I'm like, when is this one being released? Because I know they have an edit done. They're submitting it to festivals. I don't know which ones it's gotten into. I haven't heard. The feature I just worked on was called Edie Arnold. I posted a little bit on my Instagram story, but I think I have any other posts, but they're on Instagram. And that's a really fun one. Catholic schoolgirls form a punk band, shenanigans ensue. It's really funny. It was funny on set, so I'm just hoping it's
Translates.
cuts together well. There's some other little shorts that I've done production for. Yeah, everything's kind of in works, in
Yeah,
waiting to come out.
that's normal. I mean, you're used to the school timeline where it's like, oh, whatever I'm working on has to be out by December or has to be out by April. It's not how the real world often works. And sometimes I'll work on something and people are like, oh, When is that coming out? And in fact, I got asked if I would participate in a documentary here at school. They wanted to focus on me. As you guys know, I lost a lot of weight. So they came and they followed me to the gym and they filmed me at the gym, and they've been filming me for a couple months. But because they followed me to the gym, people come up to me all the time at the gym now and go, when did that movie come out? And I'm like, in April. And they're like, why so long? Well, why? We all know. But people that aren't in the industry don't know. They're like, well, they just shot it. Shouldn't it be on TV or something? I'm like, yeah, if that's only how it worked. This isn't live. It's not the news. It's not, reality TV that we're cutting together and throwing out in a week. This is our life.
Mhm.
You've done the set thing, but you've also done the back, the tail end of things. How much time are you doing on post-production stuff?
Those are fewer and far between. So I had a short that I worked on in the spring, and that one came out. It's called Came From Inside, which is a little campy sci-fi horror comedy. I want to see if that's up anywhere. A short film I worked on for someone's senior project here actually just got released all over. So that one is called Volveré, directed by Marlon Gonzalez, who kind of runs Sundance film admissions, and he's doing really well for himself. He's a film director. It was really, really nice. I worked on that one in 2022. That one was a rough one. I had lost my voice when I got to set completely the night before. And I show up at 4 a.m. because we have to drive 2 hours to Centerville. And I hadn't met any of them. And so they're like, hey, I'm this person. I'm like, and it was really ironic because the sound person can't speak. But it turned out really well. I think Tevin did another student that was in my cohort, Tevin, or did some of the production or the post for it. And then Julie, that's not her last name anymore.
She got married.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Julie Sheffield, she did the post for it. And it turned out I haven't seen it yet. And everyone's always shocked. It's like, it's been out. I know. So there's that one to watch. That one's really sweet about a immigrant and the struggles he has when he's trying to have a family. But there's that one. Came From Inside. Post. Got one that I'm going to be working on soon for a production that I did in September. Not the feature. Just a little horror short. Lots of horror going around right now. That seems to be the trend. And then another horror one that I need to finish up.
Fun. So with the experiences that you have now post-graduation, things that you learned while you were a student, if you could go back 6 years and talk to yourself, what would you tell yourself?
Keep at it. Goodness. It seems we know more than we think we do while we're in school. And sometimes I know we'll go into classes and be like, man, I don't feel like we learned anything. Like, what is the point of this? And then I got out into the, industry basically, and specifically at Voices doing post-production there. I knew so much more and was so comfortable just immediately doing it. So I'm like, oh, I know how to edit dialogue. I know how Pro Tools works. I know how to set levels and record. I know how to work with clients and talk with people because I've had to do these collaborative projects before. I know what sounds good because I've worked on so many random projects or random, even just restoration or the theory of it, I know. And so if something goes wrong, I can just pull back like, okay, what's an experience that I had? This is what the problem was. This seems similar. Let's check there. Start with the most simple option and then you move forward. You don't realize how much you know until that knowledge needs to come up. It's hard to explain that what you're learning is useful and you just have to apply it in different ways. Just have to kind of recognize it. You're going to get the knowledge and the work that you put into something. If you're just showing up to classes and expecting to know everything and to get, your grades, you're not actually going to learn as much as you think. You're going to learn more if you put more work into it. So the more work you put in, the more knowledge you're going to get, the better off you're going to be. And that's the biggest thing. I think I did a pretty good job. I think I would have liked to see, it's hard because on one hand, I want to say take on more projects. But on the other hand, I know how exhausted I was, and I would have, crumbled under some of that. But I think I managed a pretty good balance. Doing the studio job was amazing. That having to help other students troubleshoot when you yourself don't always know, so you have to just be one step ahead. And all of the practical applications there, like at Voices, we had a C24, and one of the faders was broken, and I was like, boom, let's open it up, I got this. Because I'd had to do that with the SSL. I knew how to clean out faders. I knew how to troubleshoot little things within the mixer.
That stuff's useful.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, oh, it's all digital. Come on, guys. You don't want it to always be digital. You want some analog. That's the other thing. When talking with professional mixers, I talked with, I'm going to name drop here just a little bit. James Cameron's mixer is Gary Summers, and I was sat at a table with him at the CAS Awards. So we have this big fancy catered dinner. I was with him, and I was with dialogue mixer, the editor for Lightyear. So he works with Pixar and Disney doing all of that. And I was talking with them, and I was like, gear, I know gear. Come on, guys, like let's chat about mixers. And they immediately said, analog pieces of gear, they always go for first. They have sets of preamps. Our dialogue mixer, I can't remember his name right now, I'm so sorry. He's like, I have a set of 4 preamps that they don't really make anymore, but they're so good and they sound way better than anything else you're gonna get. And that's my go-to, and that's what I want. And then Gary was talking about different mixers that he liked, and he's like, the Neve, even DigiDesign, they hate the Avid stuff. They hate the Avid S4 and the S6. They're like, it's garbage. It breaks all the time. It's weird routing. But everyone likes it because it's cheaper, and so more mixing rooms, dub stages keep getting that put in, and they're not happy about it. They care about their analog gear, and you should too. They're using certain compressors that they like, and it's all outboard gear that they're routing it through. So knowing how to work outboard gear, knowing how to troubleshoot outboard gear, because at Voices, the engineers that they have there were more music-based from BYU. So I came in and I got to teach them a lot about post-production. I got to teach them about snapshots and how to do reverb in a smarter way. It's like, why aren't you doing this? And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, this and this. Like, oh, this makes this next project so much easier, so much better. We needed a cable, and I had my soldering kit in my car, and I was like, I got this, please let me solder. Because I love soldering, and so I got to make just these little cables that we needed and fix some other ones that had some shorts in it. And that made me extremely valuable to them.
Sounds like your
Like-
value is in being useful because of your toolbox of skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every bit of knowledge ends up transferring somehow. On set, so on The Wilderness, the mixer I was working with, Andre Bottesi, out of Detroit, he's amazing. He's so smart, but all he does is production. He's kind of a genius when it comes to production stuff. He's very smart, but he doesn't really do any of the post stuff. And so he'd be like, in post, what would you want in this scenario, in this scene? And I would think about it. I'm like, well, you could do it this way or this way. On set, I'm seeing how the location is, and I'm analyzing how we're going to get the best sound. But then I'm also thinking, what does the post mixer want? What does the dialogue editor need in this? And what could they use for sound design? So I'd be like, well, I think we should do a tape like this and maybe get an option like this. And he'd be like, oh, that's really smart. I had not thought of that. And so that made me useful. The other thing that I hear every single time I'm on set is I'll be overhearing some other department, because that's just what you do. Everyone's chatting, you have downtime as you're working. And every mixer I've talked to, every DP, director of photography, or grip, or gaffer, they say, even if you're the best at what you do, I don't care if you're a bad hang. Meaning they would rather have someone who's cool and chill to hang out with on set because you're working 12-hour hard days than someone who's the best at what they do, but a jerk. The way you're gonna get jobs is if people like you, if you have connections. Every job I've gotten is because of a contact. I don't know if I should say this. I haven't sent out a single resume. And I have been more busy than my cohort who has graduated. I'm the one getting them jobs because I can't take all the gigs. Or at Voices, they were really, really busy. And I asked, would it be helpful if you have more engineers? And they're like, do you know more engineers? I'm like, Mackenzie, I got you.
Do I know more engineers?
So I called up Andrew Humphreys, he's the smartest person in my cohort. He's a genius. His whole family is so smart, but he's not great at talking with people and getting connections. And I think that's so tragic because he's just a wonderful person and so good at audio. Like, if I need something done, I go to him. I'm like, hey, buddy. And so I'm like, all right, Humphreys, get in here. Let's get you some work. Or if I can't do a post gig, I'm like, Humphreys, come on. So I was able to get my buddies who wanted more work into the studio and have some more freelancing gigs. The Wilderness gig, that was because my friend Kelty, who I worked with at a theater, not doing film or anything, but she knew I did sound. And so throughout college, she would call me up whenever she needed someone on set for some random film project. And that got me more contacts within the film world here. And I still run into those people on set and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, you did our sound. Like, awesome, we're taken care of. We don't have to worry about it.
I feel like I need to cut out an interview I did in 2012 with a guy named Gene Simmons and just pause you for a second and just take his words, which he said, the secret in life is that it's not always the person who knows how to twist the knobs and dial in the faders. It's the person that you know who knows how to fix your car that you like, the person who has people skills that you get the job to. And he said that, and I was like, that makes sense. Because I'm not gonna call somebody I can't stand and be like, hey, come work with me. I gotta be in a room with you for the next 10 hours.
No.
I'm gonna be like, Mario, let's go hang. All right.
If they're on set, it's someone you hear, like, someone I just want to grab a beer with, like someone that you're okay spending time with, someone who is competent. Like, that's a huge part of it. You need to know how to do your job and do it well and take accountability for it. But you can compensate for that if you're not as good at the gear stuff or as good at the theory with just being a cool person and a well-rounded person who can just talk about any random thing with people, having good dialogue or that, yeah, like, you know, good conversation dialogue with people, good conversations instead of dialogue too much.
It's not scripted in life.
No, it's not. But being able to, you know, have opinions and chat and be cool about it. One thing that I learned more recently is on set, you're managing emotions, not just your own, because you have to be calm under pressure. So you are managing yours, but you're also sometimes managing the directors. I worked on a documentary. Oh yeah, that's the other one that I did. Keep forgetting. Worked on a little documentary about livestock guardian dogs, and we were traveling for it. So me and it was a small crew, I think like 6 of us, drove up to Wyoming and Idaho. And we had some subjects, as they're called there, not talents, to drop out last minute. And the director was kind of freaking out a little bit. This is a long process. Like, I'm at the tail end of this 4-year back and forth to film this documentary kind of thing. And we have 2 subjects drop out as we get to Idaho, our second location, and we're scrambling to figure something out because she paid for, you know, plane tickets, all of the camera equipment for my travel days and, you know, my day rate in addition, as well as like our Airbnbs and stuff. So she was losing money and she was just kind of having this moment, just kind of like this freak out. And the other people there were kind of like, oh, how do we deal with this? But I have friends, I know how big emotions go, and so I was able to kind of be like, all right, let's calm down. Let's acknowledge that this is a terrible thing, but it's gonna be okay. Get your emotions out. And now she's a good friend because she knows that she can trust me. And it's not like, I'm not trying to manipulate people. I just want everything to be chill and calm because that makes everything else easier.
So true.
And so if something goes wrong on set and the director's freaking out, or if something bad happens, you don't hit record, or some mishap has happened, if you're calm and you can manage that emotion, you can be upfront and be like, this is it. Here are our options. Have solutions already before you talk to someone. Have solutions if something has gone wrong, like, okay, here's what we can do instead. And be confident with it and calm about it, and they will reflect that back. If you freak out, they'll freak out. And
Been
on
on-
set, you don't want a director freaking out.
You just say, hey, my memory card corrupted on that last take. And so we need to go back and do that. I know that we've striked and everything's down, but well, then they usually come back and say, well, do you have any alternates? And you say, well, I'm gonna have to take a few minutes and check. Take that few minutes and check. We'll pause everything for a minute. You go, this is what I have. You show it to them, like, we can work with that.
Yeah.
Like that, they would rather you say that than just be like,
Yeah.
right.
Doing wild takes, so getting extras just in case. I keep saying this in the post-production class, so I'm sorry when you keep hearing this, is kill your darlings. Know when enough is enough. On set, if director is stressing out, but you want one more take, read the room. And be like, you know what? I'm gonna put my trust in the post guys that they can handle this. So if you have experience in post and you know what you can work with and what is usable, that helps you out on set to be like, yeah, we're fine. We're okay. It's not gonna be ideal, but we're good. We're chilling.
We got to wrap up here in a few minutes. Let's turn the time out to these guys. Do you have any questions for Sophie? I know you guys interact with Sophie on a regular basis, but do you guys have any specific questions you want to ask that we can field?
Well, you're probably working on projects all the time. Is there anything you're working on that's like your own creative project that you're hyped about?
Not really. That's been something I want to do, but all of my effort kind of tends to go towards other things. I want to start working on my own sound design library, to kind of get out, do more field recordings for my own, keep, so I can have good recordings, so I'm not slogging through libraries all the time. I know it's there. I'm always helping friends out. I guess that's kind of like my own personal project, is if any friend needs something, or if Griffin wants some help doing something, we're like, all right, let's go out and do it. Yeah, I'll do some field recordings on my own. That's almost like a meditation I'll do, is I'll take a mixer and a mic and go out in the mountains and just record the air.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
We'll go Eric and then Wendy.
When you were here and you started to like take work as a student, how soon did you start doing that? And when you started taking your first gigs, how did you deal with maybe like some like imposter syndrome, or figuring out that, thinking, oh, okay, I can take this work, or getting started on projects like that?
Yeah.
And,
Imposter syndrome never goes away, by the way.
yeah, my idea of it is that it's a little bit more intimidating the first time until you realize.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll still always get it.
So I got pretty lucky in that I made contacts pretty quickly. I'm a fairly friendly and talkative person, and so I make friends pretty easily. And so my first time, I went to the sound design conference twice, Mix Presents twice. My first time I went, met with some other UVU students who were making a film, and they needed someone for set stuff, and that's what I was kind of interested in mostly at the time. And so they asked me to do it. I was like, I have never really done that before. I don't know if I'm right. He's like, your enthusiasm is all we need. And so that that fall, that October, I want to say, we shot a feature, and that was my first like professional film project. And Tevin was my boom op for it, and we were paid an absolute pittance, and it was night shoots. And I prepped for that. I hadn't taken the sound for film class, and so I went to Owen and I was like, what can I do? Give me a crash course. He told me to read the location sound Bible, so I did that, and I just watched videos and I read forums online of like how to do it, and I knew general recording techniques. And so I went in and I did my best, and then I think back on that and I'm like, wow, I did shit. That was not good. But that project effort also never got off the floor, and it was, scrapped, but I still got paid for it. And so I learned a lot from that first time. And so you take gigs, you take student gigs, student films, and there's less pressure there because it's okay. It's not going to destroy your career if you make a mistake. So after that, I gained a little bit of confidence and was like, I can be on set. I know how to do this now. And I took the sound for film class, and then I just took whatever I got if I had time. And the more practice you get, the better you get, and the more you kind of start figuring out how everything works together. I still get imposter syndrome. People will ask me like, these guys asked me to come and teach, and I'm like, I feel like I'm still a student.
Yeah, I think the sorry. the
I deal with
specific
it too.
The specific type of imposter syndrome for me was just the intimidation of doing something for the first time.
Dude,
Oh,
Yeah.
I
so
can
that,
say something real quick on this.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I still get it. I'm
Yeah.
42 years old.
Yeah.
They asked me to teach a class. I'm like, I never taught that class before. And they're like, so?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. But I still have that moment of like,
mhm.
why do you want me to do this? Like, who am I to teach this class? And then like, you have more expertise than I do in this, and I'm teaching it. You teach it. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
thing to know, and that I'll tell you, is you know more than you think you do right now. To get over that imposter syndrome, it really is getting over the anxiety. I always think of it as like, whenever you're falling asleep and you get like that jerk, or I don't know if you guys have ever had sleep paralysis. It sucks, but the way to break out of it, it's this terrifying like feeling of you can't move, and it's just like everything's terrible because your brain is half asleep, and you can rationalize it as much as you want. But the only way to break out of it is if someone touches you, or if you like move your hand. And so I think of taking projects as jerking yourself into it. And so you kind of stop thinking and you just say yes. And you take it and you're like, cool, I will deal with it whenever it comes. I'm going to prep for it day by day. I say day by day, bit by bit, bird by bird is what I tell people. Bird by bird is a whole other thing that I won't get into. But it's just doing it. I know that that's really vague and hard, but it's like with post-production or with an assignment, the hardest thing for me is starting, and the hardest thing is just opening it. And so if you can get the energy or get the anxiety up and then just do it without thinking about it and throw yourself directly into it, that's how you do it. That's kind of what worked for me. And then it gets calmer. And then you can just be like, all right, if someone asks you to do something and you haven't done it before, you're like, okay, I've done this that's similar. I've done this that's similar. You ask them questions. Be like, can I do this? I can figure it out. Tell
Also-
yourself you can figure it out because you can figure it out.
It also gave you a good thing that if you build a team, that you put people in place that if you aren't into a spot where you feel like you can do something well, I'm gonna take it to music, which is out of the realm, but let's just say I want to record something and I know that I'm like solid at recording guitars and vocals, but I'm like feel not so confident at recording the drums. The easiest thing that I can do is ask somebody who's really good at recording drums. How would you do this? The first time I recorded a grand piano wasn't at school because we didn't have one. First time I recorded a grand piano was after I'd already been working at a studio that had a piano for about 3 months. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, we need to record the piano. And I went into that paralysis of like, oh crap. And all I did was I just called up my friend and said, hey, how would you do this? I've never done it before. And the answer was, try this and tell me what you think. And all of a sudden it
You-
was,
You don't have to know everything and you don't have to do it alone. The reason we're in classes and, make you do group projects is so that you make contacts within your cohort, so that you can have a network of people to rely on. If I need bass recorded, I'm calling up my buddies Roman or Griffin, because I'm not a music person. If I need something musically done, I'm gonna call them and be like, hey, how would you do this? And they, give me advice on how to do it. It's okay to ask for help. I'm still constantly asking for help. I'm asking Owen advice on post all the time, or like production stuff. And all of my friends, like, I don't do sound for games, but my friend Sarah, she's a master's in sound for games, basically. So if I needed, or someone called me and said, hey, sound, can you do games? I'd be like, no, but Sarah can. So knowing your limitations, but also knowing you have friends, you have people here, you have professors who will help you. And so if you don't know how to start something, ask. It's totally fine.
I got a phone call from Griffin, Humphreys, and Sophie from Voices.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're running into a problem. Do you know how to solve this? Yeah, try this.
It was a Pro Tools problem.
Yep.
And it was late at night and we had tried everything and there were sessions in the morning. We're like, this little studio space room needs to be up and running and we don't know what's going on. There are no forums that are with this problem. And so finally we're like, all right, call Brian. Called Brian and he helped.
Was that the Pro Tools downgrade thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a known issue. Just reinstall Pro Tools to the previous
Well,
version.
it was a known issue for like 3 days.
3 days. Because I get the advanced
Yeah.
warnings on all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is a known issue that they have to fix. Downgrade, that's the answer.
Yeah.
And so there's no answers on the internet,
No.
but they know a resource to ask. And I said, like, how do we fix this? I'm like, just downgrade
Yeah.
your version.
And it was such a random problem, it would just affect random computers, and so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, we just got unlucky.
Yep.
But we got lucky, because
And I had read that answer about 24 hours before they called and asked that question. So it was the right time to ask that question. You got a question, Whitney?
Yeah, I don't want it to go too long, but I was just curious, like with all the projects you've worked on and ones that maybe didn't finish or come out, how do you keep your portfolio up to date with your
So,
wide variety?
like I said, I'm probably not the best example for that, because I have not sent out resumes. So I think I've sent maybe 1 or 2 reels to people who were like, hey, we just want to see what you're capable of sound design wise, or if you're a good fit. And so I had my reel that I had thrown together for CAS to send to them, and that worked. So my portfolio, and with production sound, it's really hard to have a portfolio because the stuff you're working on, 1, gets edited later, and 2, you don't own those files. Production owns those files, producers, the directors, the company owns those files. And so keeping your portfolio up to date with production is a little trickier, and it's more word of mouth. So on the Wilderness, my favorite project, I made a bunch of friends, like very good friends and very good contacts in other parts of production. And so they recommend me and their word, because they've worked themselves up and are respected. That holds more weight. And so that's how I get it. It's like, they worked with me before, they know how I work, they're recommending me. And so if you're doing good work, you also have to represent the people who are getting good work. So I guess
Cool.
I should be updating my portfolio because I've worked on some post stuff and it needs to go in there. It's my least favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I was curious, like, it didn't really seem like there was a good way to like add that you were a boom op on something to a portfolio because it goes through so much.
Yeah,
work.
so the
You
thing
can just
is,
put on their boom up and then just list
yeah,
dates or
Okay.
titles.
taking pictures. People on
Instagram.
set like to take pictures of, if you're in weird positions. I have a lot of pictures of me as a boom op in like power stances or like under things or like squished in places. And those are always funny, but those also are like, hey, this person's dedicated. And so when I was putting together my portfolio for school, I just put pictures of me on set, like my whole year, like with people in the background of like, hey, I'm doing this right now.
One thing I'm gonna say in this, cause NAM's in January, every time I go to NAM, all the people say, the best and the easiest way for you to develop a portfolio for doing audio work is by putting together an Instagram that showcases the things that you're doing. And the best reel I saw yesterday was somebody saying, I wish somebody would have told me when I was in school that 90% of boom mopping is laying on the floor in an awkward position with the boom pole in a weird spot. And I was like, that's the most creative reel. And then they just put all these, montage of pictures together. But that's somebody's easy way of saying, this is what I do. And I'm making fun of myself because I do it, but I'm willing to do it. And I was like, that's such a great way to
Yeah.
approach this.
I literally have a picture of me, like face down on a hill, because we were doing a weird upshot, like looking down, and it was wide, and so the only place I could get any sort of sound was on the ground, like scooting the boom on the ground and just kind of like pointing it. And so there's a really funny, I was like army crawling to get like as close as I could. It's the most unflattering picture, but it's hilarious. And, I did what I needed to do instead of just phoning it in and like holding the boom way back. It's like, no, you can get in there.
I built this into my class, if you've noticed too. What do I have you guys do every single day that you're in my class?
Take pictures.
Starting to get you guys, just throw those on Instagram.
Yeah.
The cogs are turning.
I got ways to teach you without teaching you. So Sophie, thank you so much for coming in. If you guys have any questions, you guys know how to track her down. And yeah, we're gonna run down and go to another class now. But for those of you online watching, thanks for watching. See everybody next time.